Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to start with a provocative read on something. It actually came from Carlos. Carlos is an insatiable reader, and he gets access to all these very esoteric, expensive, and deep research, analytic reports on all kinds of things. He spends more on those than most people earn, and they're really high-level stuff. But he had a report he was reading about incompetency, and I was looking for it, but I was in Mexico until yesterday, so I didn't have it. And I've got the distillation. I want to start it because my job is to polarize and provoke your thinking from the beginning. So he sent me the report. I just can't find it. But I'm going to give you one paragraph. Subject line is why people fail to recognize the obvious. And here's what he found after doing a little research. And there's a professor named Dunning who's at Cornell. And according to Dunning, a professor of psychology, most incompetent people do not know they are incompetent. One reason that the ignorant also tend to be blissfully self-assured, I love that, blissfully self-assured, Dunning believes, is that the skills required for competency often are the same skills necessary to recognize competency. The incompetent, therefore, suffer doubly. Not only do they reach erroneous conclusions and make unfortunate choices, but their incompetence robs them of the ability to even realize it. In fact, this incompetence, in Carlos' opinion, can also be denial to accept reality. And I'm saying that as a preface to this weekend because I don't want any of you to deny accepting reality. And reality has many facets, as we will learn. It's a facet about grow or die. It's a facet about what value means. It's a facet about what you have to do with your enterprise. It's a facet about what the market wants. It's a facet about the trends. It's a facet about competition. It's a lot of different things that many people have chosen ostrich-like not to really acknowledge. And as Carlos will tell you, it's a facet about, and I'm getting ahead of myself, looking at the commitment and the investment of time, energy, opportunity cost, let's say your own lifetime value, and whether or not you're getting a return on your investment equal to what you could get if you really redirected it somewhere else. A lot of people shouldn't be in their business. A lot of people, the way they're running their business, they'd be better off stopping, taking the time, the effort, if there's no capital involved, the opportunity cost to build something else, because at the end, if you have nothing and you're not making an enormous amount of yield out of it that you're reinvesting somewhere else, there's the what's wrong with this picture syndrome. So, okay, Richard, I have created an extraordinarily extensive PowerPoint. And I've done it so I won't forget anything. And I will repeat some of it. I will expand on some of it. You will maybe get bored a little bit because you'll say, I already know that. But again, remember, there's only one reason you already know that, because I chose to give it to you advanced, because all the research proves that anything you're ever exposed to, if it's linear, you have the retention of maybe 7% over a period of time. If it's nonlinear, your retention rate is even less, because every time you get inspired or introduced to a new subject or a new way of thinking, your mind trips out while the rest of the information is still being disseminated and you don't hear it. I believe I want to layer and approach these subjects from enough different vantage points that you cannot deny it. It's like submit, Dorothy, until you ultimately, those of you who don't know the Wizard of Oz. By the way, it's interesting. George Zimmer was fired yesterday from Men's Warehouse. One of the reasons that the analyst said was he no longer relates with the millennials, because the millennials are becoming a big part of the world. And I'm bringing that up because you've got to decide how much of the world do you relate with, not just current, but as your business grows, evolves, continues into the future. Okay. All right. So there's a picture of me. Pretty cool. I have been forged all my life by blessedly beneficial mentors in understanding the Socratic interviewing process, asking penetrating questions, listening very carefully to the answers, reflecting deeply on the implication, the source, the reality from which it's founded, thinking clearly about what the impact is on me, reflecting on whether that shifts my reality, going deeper. And I want to start by the quote from Socrates: "A life which is unexamined is not worth living." And I would say a business model, an entity, a life that is invested predominantly in an enterprise that isn't carefully and continuously examined probably isn't worth operating, because at different points you have to do reality checks, and we're going to challenge you to do reality checks throughout. Okay, so simple, but I'm going to repeat it because I want you to get this into your head. You're paid to think. You're paid to add value to society. You're paid to solve problems for others. Oftentimes they don't even know they have. They've never even verbalized. To act and transact your business differently, more effectively, and effectively, advantageously can be defined in many ways depending upon the application of your product or service than anyone else. Because if you don't add more value, if you don't solve more or better problems, if you don't do it differently, what value do you add, and why should they choose you over everyone else? And I'm going to force you, and there are a lot of people I know who've been enabled unintentionally by a lot of information marketeers who sell a one-trick tactical pony as the end-all solution to your life, and that's delusion. I'm going to force you all throughout to slow down and think, because without this kind of a context, you'll never really grow your business to the level it deserves. Okay. I'm going to excerpt this because it was introduced to me, and I really like it because I think it sets the stage, and I'm going to read it with my own intonality. So this is from a book on mastery by Robert Greene. I haven't read the book, but apparently he's very popular, right? And his books are pretty interesting. I love this part. So as you accumulate more skills and internalize the rules that govern your field, your mind will want to become more active, seeking to use this knowledge in ways that are more suited to your inclinations. What will impede this natural creative dynamic from flourishing is not a lack of talent, but your attitude. Feeling anxious, insecure, you'll tend to turn conservative with your knowledge, preferring to fit it into the group and sticking to the procedures you have learned. We call that shifting or sinking back into status quo. Instead, you must, should be underscore, italic, bold, force yourself in the opposite direction. As you emerge from your apprenticeship, you must become increasingly bold. Instead of feeling complacent about what you know, you must expand your knowledge to related fields, not just stay within the realm of what you're comfortable with, giving your mind fuel to make new associations between different ideas. You must experiment and look at problems from all possible angles. As your thinking grows more fluid, dynamic, your mind will become increasingly dimensional, seeing more and more aspects of reality. In the end, you'll turn against the very rules you have internalized, shaping and reforming them to suit your spirit. Such originality will bring you to the heights of power. And I believe that that is the whole message in this 3-day sojourn. So the key is understanding and exercising the difference between convergent thinking and divergent thinking. Convergent thinking is pretty much status quo thinking, the ability to deduce single solution to the problem, follow the rules, doing what you've been doing, the way you've been doing it from everything you know in general. It's the ability to give the correct answer based on what you already know. Divergent thinking, which is a more sophisticated way of what I've taught most of my life, which is funnel vision, typically occurs in a spontaneous, free-flowing manner by exploring many possible solutions that are generated in an emergent cognitive fashion from a broader arc of thinking and access. It typically, did I already say that? Did I switch it? Okay. Many possible solutions are explored in short amount of time, and unexpected connections are drawn. And we're going to work on exercises for that. After the process of divergent thinking has been completed, your ideas and information are organized and restructured in fresh, new, breakthrough ways. I've been doing for 30 years tunnel vision versus funnel vision. And I don't know how many, I should ask, who's got a long history of a relationship with me? You do, Joe, because you've been here for, 20 years? You've been following my stuff off and on? Anybody else long? How long?
12 years.
12 years. Anybody longer? 20 years. Did it help you, I hope? But the good news, it's had applicability, implications all over the food chain. You probably know this, but I'm telling you this and then we'll go forward, is that I've been able to do this for 30 years around the world. And I'm saying it with pride, but not really trying to be arrogant, with comforting liberation to you. It works in China. I got the top candy company in the world that was struggling. It works in Japan. It works in Russia. It works in Indonesia. It works in Singapore, if you work it. So these are universal and enduring concepts, approaches, laws, principles that can be modified and integrated into all kinds of hybrids. Okay, see, the key to everything I do is I've been involved in 465 industries. That's why I want you all talking, because your reality is going to be predicated and forged by whatever your background is, whether you're linear, whether you're analytical, whether you're creative, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in service, whether you're in retail, wholesale, how you market. All of those are going to fuse, forge, skew how you interpret everything that's going on today, not good or bad, but different. And if everybody can get the benefit of as much as everybody else's insights, it's going to be like me. I have such a combined knowledge that it's almost what they call universal intelligence. I've seen so many different ways of doing things, 50,000 different ways to probably sell, market, generate leads, convert leads, business model strategies, ways to compete, ways to be preemptive, ways to access your competition, your predator, whatever happens before or after. But if you haven't, you have a disadvantage. You can get a great acceleration by picking everybody's minds here. Okay, simplistic, and please, for your sake, for me to take the time to go through these things is a lot of work for me because I already know it. If you think you already know this, but you don't do this, slowing down enough to let the message permeate and really trickle all the way through your being is the most important thing you can do for the future of your business. So if you look at all the top performing companies in almost every industry market in the world, they're the ones who engineer the greatest quantity, quality, and consistency of breakthroughs in these areas. Strategy, marketing, innovation, management. Change your strategy, you change your results. Change your marketing, you change your results. Change your innovation, and I tend to be, and everybody knows it, I am so intimidated by technology, it's unbelievable. A lot of technology companies come to me knowing that because they want me to tell them how to communicate with the market and how to articulate it. But together we're going to discover what's going on in technology throughout this weekend through our interactions with the real players who are on the front lines of commerce. But innovation does not have to mean technology. What it does have to mean is bringing greater benefit or advantage to your market that your market can see, can perceive, can desire above and beyond, first, your competitors, above and beyond, second, doing nothing, and above and beyond, third, the alternative, and that it's so compelling that it wants and it makes them to want to take action now. Now, it's certainly great if it's driven by technology, and we'll talk a lot about the importance of technology, even though it's not my strong suit. But I want you to think deeply about everything I'm covering, because these are not filler. No matter what type of company, enterprise you run, what wins in business today is not, you can't out-muscle them. You can't out-muscle them. You can't out-resource. Most of you and most people watching aren't going to have billions of dollars in unlimited bank. Maybe you do. God bless you if you do. Most people I've helped didn't. the ability to outthink, out-market, out-strategize, out-contribute. Contribute means giving value to the market. Out-innovate, out-sell, out-position. Out-connect, meaning connect socially and digitally your competition. And how do you do it? By using far greater, more powerful, penetrating brain power. You don't have, who's got more than 7 days a week and 24 hours? Some of you might have a bit higher or lower IQ, but that isn't going to do it. It's how and what you do with that IQ. And I know this is also self-evident. You go, oh, Jay, did I pay for that? Yes, you actually did. Because if it is self-evident, you're not using it, shame, shame, shame on you. You must learn to use deductive, inductive reasoning and see the implications, correlations, opportunities, threats, trends, and dangers. Okay. I'm just going to go through because deductive and inductive reasoning is pretty self-evident, I think, to most of you, isn't it? So I don't want to go through it all, except for most people are guilty of doing one or the other. If you can develop the ability to integrate the two, one and one is not two. Everything this is about. I was in Mexico, and they were asking me what name to put on the work. And again, I haven't seen the workbook because it was done in my absence, so if we fail to acknowledge, we'll clean it up and do it in the past. But it's about growing your business exponentially. A good friend of mine, the week before I left, invited me, and I was so angry. I didn't get the invitation until it was filled. There were 50 people at a it wasn't a seminar, it was a symposium at Fox Studios on exponential growth of all kinds of industries, technology, medicine, and there are all these guys, all these genome people, and all these people solving world problems, and all these people studying medical problems, and they're all talking about exponential growth, both good and bad, and he was giving me the distillation and what the findings were and what the projections were, and the bottom line is that if you stay static, you're screwed. Okay, if you stay static, you are screwed, and you're screwed so bad you can't even tell it. And no such thing. You either grow or die. The concept of exponential goes two ways. You can grow exponentially up, or you can regress exponentially into the abyss. And I'm not trying to be scary or melodramatic or theatrical. I'm just being realistic. Okay. So inductive is inferred to general conclusion. Okay, deductive is a conclusion reached from general statements, but in inducing reasoning, the conclusion is reached from specific examples. You must learn to use these three different factors together: hindsight, insight, foresight, and you got to be able to connect them through a lens of critical thinking to displace dangerous risks with unlimited upside. That means right now, most people, and you're going to get to a lot of the old J. Abraham theorems that we'll visit later, but one of them is so laughable. It's make success a natural part of your everyday actions. Now, who in the world doesn't agree that that's a pretty simplistic concept? Make success a factor in your everyday actions. And yet, and I don't want to embarrass you, but when I bring people on stage at the hot seats and look at what they're doing, I'll say, why are you doing that instead of that? Well, what do you mean? Well, costs this, takes that, reaches that, you spend all your time, and they've never thought about it. Critical thinking is one of the most powerful and propellant fuels of exponential growth you can ever master, and you will get it through lots of different iterations this weekend. And the concept of displacing dangerous risk with unlimited upside is that if you look at everything you do and how you do it, from using time to the decisions you make, to the impositions you place on the market by not asking them and letting the market tell you through tests, through the articulations you make that don't necessarily demonstrate advantage or benefit or are not expressed to the other side, meaning the recipient. There's a myriad of impact points that no one's ever thought about that are either enhancers or reducers. You saw one of my colleagues, and we'll give full acknowledgement to everybody, has this belief, and I'll come and visit it later, you're either a multiplier or a diminisher in life. You're either adding value or taking away. You're either making people greater or you're making them worse. You're either adding to the market or you're taking away. Nothing is static. And it's a very recurring theme of everything I'm going to talk about and everything we're going to talk about. So I'm going to let Carlos, because I got a lot of ground to cover. When I'm ineffective, you interrupt, okay? Yes. So you want to do a quick little statement on hindsight? Because I think most people live in that world, don't you?
Yes. Insight, in fact, is what you did in the past, and you assume that you will be doing.
Now you said insight, but you mean hindsight.
No, insight is a perspective that you have today based in insight or foresight. So I think there's a very important insight, because that is a problem that I can see more and more with most companies, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. They are thinking with a hindsight-based insight, which means that they are looking at what they did in the past, and they assume that the future will be a continuation of the past. And that is not true. We are living in a fast-moving world. So insight, I will say, in part is obsolete. It's tough to say that, but it's true. Sometimes, 10 years ago, we said, my experience. Today, sometimes in a few industries, the experience can be something very negative. And that is the reason why most companies, larger multinational companies, prefer to hire young people. All depends what I'm against. But inside, so
except for your young people, he's not against you.
Inside, you understood. Inside now is today. What I'm doing today, my perspective today of the retrospective, that is hindsight from yesterday. What I need is to acquire foresight. Foresight is to help me to see the changes that are coming to you, to the market. In other words, you need switch from hindsight-based insight to foresight-based insight. Believe me that there are no more. I can show you a lot of surveys done by prestigious organizations. There are only 4% of senior executives or entrepreneurs that have foresight-based insight. That is a rare thing. It's something that you need to learn.
And what we're going to do throughout, just so you know it, is you're not going to need to learn it. You're going to learn it, but you have to understand, and I'm going to tie it together because what we're trying to do is develop our collaborative ability to discuss this when our book comes out, is that most people are stuck in the past. And what Carlos is saying, if you look at all the research, today's not yesterday. And tomorrow's not going to be a slight diversion from today. It can be totally different. It can be totally different in market needs, access, everyday. There can be the need that you fill may be singular, but the means people have to fill it can be infinite. And tomorrow there can be all new needs. And I was explaining, like somebody wants to lose weight. They can take pills, they can go to a gym, they can get a trainer, they can read a book, they can watch now video training, they can watch passive video training or plug into a video trainer, they can go and get liposuction. My wellness doctor just bought a laser that he swears if I put it on my gut and my butt 8 times, I'll get a weight loss and tighten up. There's a lot of means, and that's today. And you've got to be so pulsed constantly and not intimidated. You've got to be excited, because everything you commit to start doing is mostly what your competition doesn't even understand. So instead of going, oh my God, that's so intimidating. Oh my God, I can't handle that. Oh my God, it's just too much. I want to check myself into the Betty Ford Center for Crazy Entrepreneurs. you should rejoice and instead say, this is so cool because I'm looking at this and I'm understanding it and I'm seeing it and I'm pulsing it and I'm perceiving it and I'm integrating it from a place my competitors don't even grasp. Don't you agree, Carlos?
Fully agree. And I think that if you yourself, you can, during the 3 or 4 days, you retain one thing, is this one. You need to learn to have foresight based insight. And that asks for you to be a creative thinker. A creative thinker is someone that starts with diverging thinking, then is creative thinking, and you end with conversion thinking when it's the execution.
And throughout, he'll make parenthetical comments. Just understand that Carlos has studied the mechanics of this from vantage points most of the people I've been exposed to have not. And his goal is to try to distill it down. And it's cute. We make jokes because Carlos thinks in Spanish.
Well, I don't know anymore because I'm French. Well, I was born in Argentina. When I was 20 years old, we moved to France, and I'm living here 27 years, so I don't know where I come from. I'm traveling a lot.
So he's going to do everything he can to explain it, but sometimes it'll be in different forms. So have fun. We're like at the UN today. Okay? Thank you. All right. Okay, it's a P. We're gonna go to Peter Drucker often because the guy was such a seminal thinker. In any organization, again, you're going to say, I already know that. You can't know it enough. If you already know that and you want me to audit how you've been conducting your business and you're prepared for mass exposure, I think will prove that you might know it intellectually, but you're not grappling or embracing it transactionally and slowing down to see it so in such a harassing way that it cannot be not only denied as far as intellectually, but denied as far as it haunting you so damn deeply that you have to actuate on it when you go home. So people in any organization are always attached to the obsolete, the things that should have worked but did not, the things that once were productive and no longer are. Okay, you got to grasp all the forces, factors, laws, trends, psychology affecting, afflicting, impacting your market, industry, or consumer. And most people, when I do consults, particularly with small, medium entrepreneurs, there's a lot of unfortunate predictability. I call it UP. And the unfortunate predictability is they want breakthroughs. And I'll say, okay, let's start. Tell me everything you know about your direct competition. Tell me about how they position, how they sell, what their proposition is, what their ads are, their salespeople, what their website does better, different, what their product lines are. Tell me why their market buys from them and not you. Tell me about all the alternative ways you can buy. Tell me the same things about them. Tell me price difference, performance difference. Tell me everything you know about the mind and the desires of your market. And they'll look at me because they've done none of that. But they want a breakthrough. But they don't want to break through enough to try to understand the factors and forces. They don't know about the trends that are occurring. They don't know about what other people are doing. They don't know about the alternative that are available. They don't know about the way people price. They don't know about their value. They don't know anything about different people's revenue models. They just want a breakthrough because they went and bought some info marketers enabling single tactic, and it didn't make them any money because it was something that worked 2 years ago. And we're talking about building real businesses that endure and thrive. So you got to be able to isolate as it applies, and it's not one size fits all because it differs business to business and related business to business, meaning all the there's two different kinds. There's all the alternative means, and there's all the different pre and post product services that complement or go along with or precede yours. And if you don't know all about all those product services, the forces, the laws that are trending, all the trends that are out there, what the psychology is, we'll get into it. I'm just not trying to scare you. I'm trying to excite you because, show of hands, how many people think you really do a good job of even doing that? Raise your hand. Now, keep in mind, God bless every one of you because you're in this room and your competitors aren't. So just by realizing, if I stop now and go home and go chase my kids or my wife around the house, you have more understanding, if you acted on it, than your competitors. And isn't advantage what life is all about? What I say in business is, if you can think of it, and Harrison, you'll like it because Harrison's an attorney. It's like the scales of justice. You know, with the scales of justice, they always show you, and justice is blind. My whole analogy is what you're trying to do is get as much on weighted to your advantage, not just to your advantage against competition, but to your advantage against somebody saying no instead of yes, to your advantage instead of somebody choosing the third option, which is inaction or no action. And you got to understand, you can't do that with me just giving you a flip answer. You have to do that with knowledge-based understanding of what you're dealing with. It's like designing an airplane and not understanding, aerodynamics, thermodynamics, or even understanding them and not knowing that you're going into a hurricane. Saying, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I mean, you've got to. It's refreshingly and wonderfully easier to grasp than you think. It doesn't mean it's easy to get your hands around, but it's not as mysterious or intimidating. So your superior interpretation, reasoning, and strategic proactive thinking, formulating, calculation will allow you to choose the highest and best paths to pursue and the least risky options for your business. I mean, all of you who have this 15, 20, 10, 30-year background with me, or 25, I've always stood for highest and best use. Highest and best use of time, ability, opportunity, communication, access, capital, human capital, relational capital, instead of least and worst. I mean, think about it. The opposite is least and worst, isn't it? I've always stood for making irresistible propositions instead of resistible ones. All self-evident, and yet you can look at most people's offers, they're terrible. Unbeatable offers instead of beatable. So when you take risk out of the deal, it gives you three things. It gives you more predictable yield that can be reinvested. It gives you more ability to reach broader in the market, and it gives you great, just not just advantage, but superiority over the direct and indirect competitors that you're dealing with. Do this and it leaves all the riskier, because if you're taking the highest, best, and your competitors aren't, who's got more risk, you or they? And risk is their enemy and yours, and being well hedged and more certain. And certainty is dynamic, because certainty today is not certainty tomorrow, as Carlos says, because it's an ever-changing world. But you basically want to do what they're not doing in ways they're not doing it, and it's got to be externally focused. So we're going to follow an integrative mindset, method, process. Business should grow markedly. Some of this is redundant, I'm sorry. And we're going to try to create for everyone what I'll call an optimal strategy. I wish I could divine what the ultimate, universal, singular, one-size-fits-all optimal strategy is for everyone, but alas, it doesn't exist. Each one of you is different. What you're doing is different. What you'll end up wanting for yourself once you understand your options are different. The markets and the scope you compete, the alternative markets that are competing against you. As Carlos says, I'm getting ahead of him, and it's in here, that every material has a melting point, and it's not all the same. So you may be safe right now. You may be being decimated right now. You may be on the verge of going through a hurricane. You may be extricating it. I mean, you're all in different parts on the continuum, and with the insight and the foresight that you'll grasp from this process, hopefully you'll emerge and you'll extricate yourself from the morass, and you'll be way above it, looking down, laughing. Anyhow, okay. So just so you understand it, and highest and best use theory comes from real estate. I want to make I've gone to enormous effort, not for my benefit, but for yours, because I know what this all means. And you may think you know what it means, but if you slow down enough to think about it and then extrapolate, my goal is to haunt you when you get home. To haunt you so much, but you can't go back and say, I'm not going to look at my notes. Oh, it was good, but now I got to go back to the alligators from yesterday in the hindsight-based old world because that was exciting and it was good intellectual entertainment, and I guess I got my money's worth, and okay, I'm going to do the same old thing. I want you to be so different. So in real estate, it's fundamentally taking a piece of land and doing the maximum you can with it that's feasible, possible, and legally permissive. And my analogy is if tomorrow morning we were going to buy a big piece of land across from the Beverly Hills Hotel, and it was 4 acres, in the middle of it was a 2-bedroom house, we wouldn't appraise it at what a 2-bedroom house would be worth. We would appraise it at what that land would be worth if it was converted to a shopping center or a hotel or a bunch of condos, the highest and best use. But we don't impose that kind of thinking on our business and our actions. There's no concept or strategy is guaranteed to hurdle you to stardom. The overall effect of the process you'll learn if you integrate it. Everything I do is integrative because that's how you bring the power of geometry to bear. Everything I'll teach is about using geometry, using exponential, not just thinking, because thinking is static. It's neat, but actions are the key to translate the thought into a result. It'll harness the law, because all this is mathematical, scientific, and logical. I mean, people think that marketing greatness is an art, and I might have a little more intuitive and natural talent, but there's very little that you will be exposed to, and you already know what you're going to be exposed to because I gave you a privy to the whole damn PowerPoint, that you aren't capable of grappling with if you're opening your mind and not thinking, this isn't what I want something else. Just be in the moment. That's why the workbook is not designed to follow this, because I don't want you looking for this in the workbook. I want you looking at me and thinking. Okay, make the competitors take more risk. You get the edge. It's very simple. We're playing a game, aren't we? I love games. You're playing a game. The game is who's going to have to take risk, us or the competition. How can we take the risk out of the game we play and move it over more to the game they play? And if we can't do it in the current game we're playing, maybe we need to play a different game either within the industry, a niche, or a category of buyer, or a different proprietary package we're going to do. Or maybe we have to reevaluate the prudence of the whole business we're in because it may not really make sense for the highest and best use, opportunity cost, and the value we're trying to create. Okay, so I just want, again, it's redundant, but I want you to I don't want you to pass over this. I want you to think so damn deeply because I don't think most small, medium entrepreneurs think ever about this. I want you to think about the concept of growth, the concept of performance enhancement, making everything you do perform better, knowing how everything you're doing is performing, knowing how your competitors' corresponding or competitive actions are performing, knowing what value creation means, not theoretically, and not to you, but to the only audience and court of judgment that is relevant, which is the marketplace. And whether your value creation is in alignment with their definition of value. Because if it isn't, it doesn't matter. Understanding, trust building, and connectivity from a decisively different point of view. And connectivity means two things. It means me connecting with you deeply and perpetually in all ways. And it's also going to mean once we all, myself included, learn all about digital and social media realities, how to connect sincerely, authentically, and continuously without gaming the system, in the digital world. Okay, this is your opportunity for discovering, evolving, testing out new economic ideas. And you can test them out through discussion. You can test them out through, what ifs. We'll do some role playing. Okay, it's the whole concept is it's designed to give you a fresh new slant on the business of doing business and to shift the way you look at the problem and the opportunity. Okay, and as Carlos so aptly says, we're going to teach you to see around corners. And I want to teach you to play the game to win, not really to stay in the game. Sort of the difference between a lot of the teams you watch when it comes playoffs. They just stay, they don't play to win, they just play to be there. I don't believe for three reasons: economic, psychic, and just purely competitive. You can afford to play the game just to stay in the game. I think everybody in this room has to make a soul-searched decision. I want to play to win, or I should get out of it. Why would you want to be just there? I mean, it's so much more fun. For me, it's always been. I like, and frankly, not as much anymore, teaching. But I love being on the front lines of capitalism, playing, doing, having to be judged by whether it works or not, having to be part of the process, be connected as opposed to being a spectator eating hot dogs and drinking beer. I'd rather be on the field, getting my brains beaten sometimes, but winning and getting all the laurels and all the rewards. And you've got to make a decision, and you got to impose it. Are you really playing to win, or are you just playing to sort of make a living and stay in the game because you've been broken down by not understanding how to control the factors and forces that are there? We already talked about that. Whatever business you're in, it's a cutthroat environment. If you play by everyone else's rules, unless you're very well capitalized or you're a very astute marketer, you're going to pay a huge price. And if you don't perform, you're not going to last. You're going to be drafted. It's a very gross word, but you're going to be eviscerated. But if you don't know what preeminent performance, preemptive performance, being a superstar in your industry looks like, how in the world can you expect to get there? And if you know what it looks like in an abstract, superficial vision, like, oh man, it's all the girls and the Rolls limousine and the big house, that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the actions, the activities, the performance, the communication, the value that you're communicating and conveying, all those things. And if you've never thought about what it's supposed to be and how it all fits together, there's no way you're going to ever basically build it. If you don't have a clue, we have strong feelings, we're going to share them. So we don't think anyone should write it out with sheer bravado or with ignorance. We think if you got a choice, choose to win. Don't choose to be mediocre. Okay, so we're going to go up and down, look at it from the height and come down. We already talked about that. See, it's nice. I'm saving you all this. Well, you know what the consequences are if you don't change, don't you really? It's not a pretty picture. I mean, this is, I should have put, the zombies tearing out you. Did anybody see the movie Cabin in the Woods? No? The ending is wild, isn't it? It's just a wild ending. Well, it's going to be like the ending of Cabin in the Woods, and it's a crazy enough movie. It's probably worth renting. It's probably on Netflix. But basically, you're going to get creamed if you don't change. But change is not negative. It's exciting. I think, the adage of you either lead or you're lapped or you follow or you're on the sidelines, it's exciting. Growth is intimidating and exciting. Carlos and I have these discussions because I've made a decision. Anyone who follows me, I used to sell, I think we did $250 million of seminars. And it would be nothing for anyone who went to the old ones. We would have 800,000 people in the room. Wasn't a big deal, except the real high-end ones. This would be a $25,000 a person program. I just burnt out. I don't want to do it anymore. I want to be involved with real commerce. I want to be involved at a much higher plane. And navigating the upward ascendancy, even for me, I tell Carlos on the phone, I'm wiped out. I got to humble myself. I got to educate. I got to connect with the CEO of this big corporation. And I got to challenge myself. But growth is the most exciting thing in the world ultimately, because in your heart when you're not. And it's like a cancer that's just eroding your business. It's only a matter of time, and you know that. Okay, so let's get going. All right. I already talked about the seating exercises, lightning rounds. I'm going to make you guys do stuff to each other. The key to all this is adapting and adopting. And by that I mean there's probably not any one thing that I will say that is absolutely, perfectly, instantly, directly slides right into your wheelhouse. So you have to stretch. You have to extrapolate. You have to adapt. You have to adopt. You have to modify. You have to forge a little bit. And that's part of the process of developing, this, this expanded thinking, this divergent thinking, this funnel vision is the ability to say, wow, I'm going to take that and do that. This is what it means to me. Don't look to me to tell you exactly what it means to you. Look to yourself, but don't look in a vacuum. Look for almost like the old navigators looking for the 3 vector points. Look for your colleagues to give you their perspectives and then evaluate accordingly. If you end up, see, there's 60, 70 people in the room. If over the course of 3 days, and those of you who are here on the 4th day, you get to hear how 70 different people experienced, and we'll break probably every 90 minutes or every couple hours, and you need to get feedback. But if you understand every couple hours what 20 or 30 people got out of it that you didn't, what do you think that's going to do to your cumulative perspective as you're evaluating, again, how to extrapolate, adapt, and adopt it to you? Okay. We're going to maximize a lot of things, and I want to list a lot of them because I want you to think in a segregated manner. I don't want it to be aggregated. We're going to the tools and techniques that eliminate constraints, bottlenecks, and log jams, many of which you probably don't even know you have, and I've got to tell. And a lot of this I'll be ahead of myself, but I don't much care. I respect the intelligence of my audience enough that I'm not about being perfectly in adherence with my PowerPoint. I'm about really, really sharing with you guys. One of my beliefs is that your job is to solve problems, rewarded for solving problems, or achieving opportunities or goals for people, but that most human beings in almost every industry don't even know exactly what their problem is. They don't even know how to verbalize it. They don't know what they're trying to achieve. And your first goal is to be able to understand clearer than I do what you're trying to achieve, why, how to verbalize it, how to express, and we'll get into this later, that you really get it at a deeper, more critical, seminal level than anybody else they could turn to. And that requires you to really get it. You can't fake that kind of an understanding. It has to be something that you really commit to really study and evaluate and examine and internalize so you really do get it. So you may not even know what the constraints are to yourself, let alone your market. We want to make competition irrelevant, but you can't do that until you understand, first of all, what about the competition right now is relevant, isn't it? You can't do the opposite until you first understand the polar opposite, and you got to do that, and I don't think most people do that. We're going to try to shape the destiny of your business future because most businesses, and I'm ahead of myself already, in small, medium-sized businesses, there's terrible, terrible statistics. 95% of all business owners never reach their goals. You know why? They don't have goals. They don't have goals that are highly refined, that are reverse engineered by timeline, by market, by product, service, marketing, salespeople, categories. They have big sweeping goals and dreams like I want to make $1 million a year, I want to retire and be able to sell my business. I want to have the most respected company in the market. None of that is reduced down to clinical granular levels, so they can't really do much with it. So we're going to shape a destiny that is reverse engineered so that it's real, so that you know at any given point where you are and you can monitor it and you can measure it and you can course correct it. And if you're not achieving it, you already have hedge and contingency plans, and if you're overachieving it, it allows you to raise your standards and your goal. We're going to talk about a lot of new power principles. We're going to look at strategies for performance enhancement. My whole life has been dedicated to understanding impact points, factors, processes, correlations, implications, applications within a business that nobody sees can be made to perform greater, made to perform more profitably or less expensively or more sustainingly. Because if you don't understand them, you can't see, you're either harnessed by factors or you're harnessing factors. They're either based like the jet stream, and when you fly with it, you get an advantage. When you fly against it, it's not much fun. And we're trying to give you the advantage. So we're going to reverse engineer things in a way you never have. We're going to be looking at all kinds of things, influences you gain or could get access to in your industry, other compatible businesses, meaning businesses that are before and after yours, businesses that may be an indirect competitor that could feed their buyers to you or vice versa, publications you can either get access, intelligence, exposure from, high-profile users you don't even know you have that can be endorsers or give you insight, celebrities you could consider bringing on board, credibility status, how to get more credibility, success stories and testimonials that you don't even know you have. We're going to look at, and Carlos is fanatic about this, and he's going to do some work on it in a little while, return on your assets. And assets are both tangible and intangible. They're the capital you've got, they're the human capital, the people, they're the access to the market, they're the time, they're the people you could be using, vendors, endorsers, media, things you don't think about. We're going to show you how to get the money for your startup or stagnant business if you need it and what to do if you can't. We're going to look at the ads you run, no matter where you run them or the equivalent, the sales you use, the recruiting that you do, and the people you're bringing, and whether you grow and develop your team. And if you have no employees, why you need to grow and develop talent, and if you can't afford talent internally, how to get talent to work with or for you, either on performance or on deferred compensation. We're going to look at promotions you do or should be doing, sales efforts you make, and the whole point of, the whole hierarchy, prospecting, point of sale, conversion. If you have an order department, client service, appointment setting, initial sale, upsell, downsell, resell, cross-sell. And again, these don't apply exactingly and completely to everyone, but by taking the time to break it down, you're going to be amazed when you look at performance or non-performance, and you're going to be amazed when you look at how much more leverage inherently you have in this. Leads you generate online, offline calls, emails, letters, referrals, all the sales communications you use, emails, salespeople, trade shows, website, pod videos, seminars you might do for clients, distributors. I mean, all the different forms that you do or you don't do, and you could do. And you could do better. Referral systems, if you don't have one or do have one. Acquiring clients at a break even up front, making a profit on the back end. If you have a back end, if you don't have a back end, why you should have a back end even if it's not your own, and you do a strategic alliance, and what the difference it would make in your allowable cost and your economics and the sustainability of your business. Host beneficiary, look at just the fundamentals of advertising. Using direct mail, which, believe it or not, is coming back. Just a lot of things that you may never, ever look at: your brand positioning or lack, your current distribution channels, your current selling system, how you prospect, target. The difference between thinking mediocre and thinking masterfully, and the difference that it'll make. We're going to look at the perceived value of your product or service and how to increase it to the client. Public relations, media management, using the media to make yourself superior and preemptive, delivering higher expected levels of service as defined and appreciated by your marketplace. Whether communicating with them frequently has value, and if so, what the value you need to incorporate into those communications. Increasing the sales skills of everybody that has any client interaction. Improving your selling skills to upsell, cross-sell, but not in a manipulative way, but in a preeminent way, and you have to learn preeminence in order to do that. Packaging, complement. We're just look at everything. Increasing pricing, change the profile of your product, offering greater, larger units of purchase for both profit, but also for the advantage of the market. Back end, we already talked about that. There's some redundancy because I had this made when I was out of the country. Programming clients, and it doesn't mean Jim Jones and Gown. It means benevolently advising them in what long-term purchasing actions, commitments, and strategies they should embrace with your company, product, service for the maximum outcome for them, their business, their family, their health, no matter whatever your product does. We're going to look at social media, as I said, from a very large point of view. And my Rob, are you right here? The other Rob. So I'm not looking. Is there anybody whose time I'm already close to? Okay, good. I have these really cool people, but they only have windows. We can interview them at certain points. So the key to all of this, and the key to what I've stood for all of my life, is very simple. It's working on the geometry of your business. All things being equal, why allow it to grow in a linear way if you can grow it exponentially? If you can grow your thinking exponentially, your action exponential, your impact exponential, it's getting the business working harder for you than you work for it, not just in the moment, but long term. Most everything's going to be refuted. This is just, this is stuff I'm not going to, you already read it. But it's about neutralizing and paralyzing the competition. It's interesting to think, man, I came here just struggling. How in the world can I even get by? Well, if you have the right mindset, you have the right strategy, and you have the right understanding, and you have the right comprehension of all the factors, forces, you really can neutralize and paralyze the competition. Is it going to happen the moment you walk out the door? No. But you will have the knowledge and the wherewithal and the prioritization to make the achievement of that, or at least a reasonable representation of that in your market or the marketplace you're currently addressing, doable. But I can't do it for you. It's like horse, water. You've got to be willing when you walk out the door to utilize all this. Okay, so the first thing is you have to shift your own self-image and go from greatness to mediocrity. And a lot of you have heard me do a little bit on this. I spent a lot of time about 9 months ago thinking deeply about this, and I might be redundant when I open the slide, but I want to give you just a natural response to this. So I believe in my heart that every human being is programmed in their DNA to operate at total greatness. Greatness as an entrepreneur, business owner, professional. Greatness as a employer, creator of growth and opportunity for your team. Greatness as a husband, wife, father, mother, lover, friend. Greatness in the community. And yet, something like 3% of all people operate even in the realm of squint-eyed greatness. Most of them are mediocre or worse. Now, you don't get up on Monday morning and say to yourself or your loved one, self, honey, I'm going to get up. It's Monday morning. I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to work at about 1/10 my capacity, and I'm going to have about 1/15 of my impact, and I'm going to create about 1% of the wealth I could, and I'm going to add about, maybe 0.004% of the superior value I could make. And by the way, I'm going to make my marketing about, maybe 1/10 as effective as I could. Give me 5. Maybe do that. You don't. So the question is, why, if we're programmed for it, why, if we want it, why, if we have the willingness and really the intellectual capacity to do it, do so few people achieve and operate in this rarefied strata of greatness? And I'm going to explore it first because without that conviction and understanding, you won't be driven to do the things I'm going to explain for the rest of the day. Okay, so I've reduced it to some pretty simplistic explanation. There are 4 steps to greatness and adding value using the strategy of preeminence, and we'll get to preeminence later, but here it is. Okay, everyone wants it. It's programmed in your DNA. Do you really want to be average? Do you really want to be mediocre? Do you really want to? You don't. I mean, I did work with a big company in Mexico. They had 2,000 salespeople, and almost none of them sold anything. And I said, do you really think a commission salesperson wants to work all day and come home or come back to the office with his or her head down in embarrassment and dismay? Do you think they want to go home and tell their family they didn't make a dime? Do you really think that's what they live for? Or do you think that they don't know how and you're not helping them? They don't know how to be great. They don't know how to be successful. And you're allowing them just by saying, sell, harder, harder, work, more. And this is where critical thinking comes. You got to ask yourself, if I'm not doing it, but I inherently want it, it means either I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know why, or I don't know that. And we're going to get into that. So most people deep down don't feel right. In your gut, you know it. You got people that are here. You know you're dissatisfied and happy because you don't know what it is, but you know you're not achieving it. Okay, so if you look at the factor, the cause, it's because we've been allowed to operate mediocre. No one's holding you to a higher standard. And in fact, your competitors love it. They love that you're swimming in a sea of mediocrity. That's the greatest thing in the world. The marketplace loves it because they can marginalize you. They can hammer you down. It's, hey, yay, more of it. Go shallower, less, be miserable. Be a fraction of yourself. I love it. I get to take advantage of you, whether I'm competing or whether I'm buying. People, first reason, so few of you ever operate in greatness. You have this PowerPoint, remember? Okay, is you don't even have an idea or a picture of what in your mind's eye, what greatness is supposed to look like. And look like means what it's supposed to look like in conduct, in action, in day-to-day time and communication, and what it's supposed to look like from a three-dimensional point of view, a CAT scan, meaning not just within your own mind, within your own conduct, but how it needs to be received and perceived by the recipients. And the recipients can be everybody from your team, your clients, your bankers, your vendors. Think about it. If you don't even have a clue what it's supposed to look like, what you're supposed to be doing, what it's supposed to feel like, what shifts in action, conduct, communication, utilization, communication, what it's supposed to be received like, how in the world can you possibly even understand it? I'm doing, and Carlos knows that, I'm doing 2 books, one with Carlos, very sophisticated, and one with Damon John from Shark Tank, which is for entry level. And they talk about a story in that about Michael Jackson. It's very interesting. Whenever he would record a new piece of music, he would listen to it on a cheap Walkman because he wanted to hear what it really sounded like when you got it at home. Because he was very sensitive to his listener. But if you have no sensitivity to any of these things, you're down and out before you started. So you got to know from all impact vantage points what greatness needs to look like for you, conduct, thinking, communication, time usage, what it's supposed to feel like. I mean, I feel great about what I do, even if I do a screwed up PowerPoint, because I know the intention. And the intention isn't about me, it's about you. But you have to understand what greatness is predicated on and how it needs to come across to the recipients, because if you're a great man and you don't impact people, I got to tell a story, I guess. Very powerful. Does anybody know the story of Demosthenes and Pericles? Okay, I'm going to tell it, but I'm probably going to get the 2 characters confused, but it doesn't matter. Greek mythology, Rome's attacking Greece. They're trying to rally all the townspeople to fight back. There's a big meeting in the town square, a big city. There are these 2 different individuals. One's Pericles, one's Demosthenes. Demosthenes is the orator. He's the famous orator in Greece. And he gets up, and for 3.5 extraordinary hours, he pontificates and articulates and verbalizes and whatever the hell you do when you're an orator. And it's mesmerizing. It's exquisite. And when he's done, everyone looks at each other and says, that has to have been the greatest speech I have ever heard. And they all say, wow, yeah, That's the bomb in Greek. I don't know how you say it in Greek. But so then Pericles, who's this little poor, impoverished, uneducated farmer whose family has been there for years, and they work the land, and they're great parents, and they live for seeing their children's children, be farmers, and they love their freedom, and they relish and treasure the wonderment of being a Greek citizen. He's can't even have eye contact. He's very shy, unassuming, unimpressive man, but he talks and forces himself to look at people. He talks about his family and when they came there in the farm, and it was just raw land, and they brought it to beauty, and they gave it life, and how important it is to them, and how wonderful their country is, and how proud he is, and how much he wants it for his children. And he's struggling, and he's awkward, but he's so sincere and so authentic. And when he's done, they don't say, "What a great speech." They say, "Let's march." And greatness is in the outcome that you produce, don't you think? And it's not in the outcome you produce about yourself. Some of the greatest people aren't even acknowledged. Their greatness is the impact that they bring onto others. So first thing you have to do is get a picture of what the hell greatness is supposed to look like. And again, for all of you, one size doesn't fit all. Your greatness and my greatness are going to be different, but you got to get at least a starting point, and you have total permission to always evolve, change, re-examine, shift, expand, alter. But if you have no picture in the beginning, you better figure out what greatness looks like. And you can identify greatness on many different fronts. Greatness as an employer, greatness as an entrepreneur, greatness for your product, greatness for your relationship at home. And I would list all of them and do a little soul searching, and then prioritize, because you can't work on all these at the same time. And I'm a great believer in a philosophy which will overlap a lot I'll talk about. There was a man at one of our seminars, and he was a retired Navy SEALs training supervisor, and he moved into management. And he reduced management to three simplistic concepts. He said, it's about targets, weapons, and movement. What's the singularly most important target you got to knock down, not just hit, but knock down and eradicate? What's the second? What's the third? And why? Make sure that the why is there so you have the right logic. What's the most predictable and near infallible weapon to knock it down and decimate it? And how do you get that weapon in the closest possible, how do you move it to a close enough striking distance that it has the highest probability of working? So if you're trying to become great, you can isolate a lot of ways you may not be great now, just doing some clinical, not, browbeating, but some clinical self-analysis. Once you get there, you should prioritize which one you want to work on first, second, and third, and why. And it may be the business is not very great, but the marriage is even less great. And it might be, frankly, for the betterment of the rest of your life, the marriage is more short-term important than the business. But figure it out, because doing all of them concurrently is hard, although the great news is there's an overlap, sort of a residual and a positive contagious effect. As you start working on one, it'll shift all of them, as you'll see is true when you get into preeminence. So that's step one. Step two. So you need a reference point. And isn't it great that you have this PowerPoint to reflect on when you get home? So the greatest determinant of greatness in the 21st century is also going to be your ability to collaborate creatively and cooperate with others who don't have the piece of the puzzle we do. In a vacuum, knowing what you may be lacking in is certainly step one, but if you knew what to do different, the odds are you'd be doing it. So you've got to be able to search the answers, search the strategies, search the alternatives, and that's through trusted, creative collaboration. And that's, Carlos is probably the greatest advocate of that. And when I get through these, I'll see if he has some epilogues he wants to make. But you've got to be willing to trust and entrust in others for the pieces of the puzzle you don't have. What I say is, if you don't have a clue in the beginning, think about those people in your lives, whether the business life, the personal life, the social life, the community life, the religious life, whatever, who, when you think about it, they really are great. They really are great. And then break down, what is it about them that makes them great? What do they do? What do they say? How do they conduct themselves? What is it about their actions, communications, the aura? And the more you can identify that, and then not necessarily ascribe those to yourself, because there may or may not be elements that you can authentically embrace. Your greatness and my greatness are different. You can't be me. Might be better than me in certain things, might be less. There's no shame and there's no right or wrong, except it's got to be authentic for who you are and who you can sustainingly become. You can't be Donald Trump if you're not. You can't be Mother Teresa if you're not. But if you're not great and you want to be great, figure out what your personal greatness should look like, and think about people you admire or that maybe you don't want to be them, but they are great, and then start to isolate the elements and see about how many of those you might be able to incorporate. And later on, I'll give you a process to work on that. But you need to go to others for help to accelerate it. So it's relative. We just said they figure out what greatness is within us. Okay, second, now you've figured out what most people don't even know, what greatness is supposed to look like for you in terms of all the different categories you want to work on. So now you got to figure what path is going to get you there, not just the fastest, because fast can be very dangerous. It can be like a rocket ship and it can implode. You want to get there the safest, because until you get comfort, you're better off with safety and certainty and a win than you are blowing up and then retreating back to status quo. So part of what I teach in all forms is you can't optimize. An optimization. Hi, Kevin. You okay? Yeah. Okay, good. You can't optimize, which is highest and best use, till you have a context of not all, but of the majority of options, opportunities, paths available. So first thing you have to do is figure out what you're trying to get to, look like, feel like, express like, and all the different ways you want to do it, personal, business, product, all those things. Then you got to say, what path is going to get me to that place? And the dumbest thing in the world, and the thing that it's like, I guess what is the word, anathema, I think is the word. It might be the wrong word. I can't stand anyone who tries to pluck a single solution by either, I'm not making fun of religion, divine intervention, or just coming up with the first thing that pops into their mind. That's so dumb, and that's so inefficient, and that's so low probability, because you want to look at options. You want to look at the pros and cons of a lot of options. There's a lot of paths. Like we're in Los Angeles. I just came from Cabo. I happen to have taken a plane. I could have taken a cruise ship. We could actually drive. There's actually a train most of the way. I could have taken a helicopter. I guess I could have hitchhiked. Depends on what my goal was. Speed, safety, cost. I upgraded to first class because I wanted a little better ride and a bigger seat so I could work on some work. But each of you is unique, but you can't choose the path to get there till you explore the paths that are available. And there are a lot of paths. But right now you don't even know what you want. You don't even know what your greatness is supposed to look like, let alone the path to get you there. So lots of ways to get there, but there's almost always going to be one way. It's going to be different for each of you that's faster, safer, and more fulfilling. And faster isn't fastest. It's faster with a high emphasis. I should have, in the next slide, I'll redo it and make safer huge. Because in the beginning, when you're trying to break out of the morass of mediocrity or status quo, the most important single factor is having a success that reinforces the prudence of wanting to change, isn't it? Because if you have a horrific failure, an embarrassment, a catastrophic occurrence, then you go, oh, that Jay's full of beans. He just embarrassed me. I wasted time. I shouldn't have come there. This is crap. And so you need to give yourself a win in all things. So figure that out. So first thing is, what's it supposed to look like? Second, what's the safest fast path, not the fastest unsafe path, that's going to get me a win? And I can build on those wins. So that's why I always break things into elements. You might have this enormous vision of 17 things you want to be different. Do you think you can do 17 things differently tomorrow? Or you think maybe you take you take a criteria that's either or a combination of the safest, most impactful. Not the most impactful, because the most impactful might be this great leader. Maybe you're not a great leader yet. Or this great communicator. Maybe you're not a great communicator. But what is going to have the most impact with the most safety? And that's like a double integration. And you can't do that till you do analysis. I'm a monster of thinking about all this stuff. I spend hours thinking about all this stuff. Hours looking pros and cons. Hours turning, the Rubik's Cube. Hours thinking about that because I've been privileged enough to be exposed to so many alternative ways of thinking, of doing, of marketing, of psychology, of strategy, of business models, of goals, of aspirations, of wealth creation, that I have a context of reference that you don't. You're not going to have mine tomorrow morning, but you can start by being Socratic. And what did Socrates say? I don't want to go back. What's the quote? Go to the first quote. What's his quote? A life unexplored. Okay, does that make sense? You see why that's a great start for this? You got to examine a lot more granular elements of everything that's impacting what you do, how you do it, where you do it, why you do it, who you do it for, how you do it. Because if you don't, me giving you a stupid, singularly enabling tactic that won't work anyhow and have you happy till you go home and fail won't really make a lot. Yes, sir.
How do you know when not to turn into this, perfectionist who tries to perfect the plan and never goes into action?
Perfection is a very dangerous sickness. I think never-ending improvement is a nice commitment, but you really want to get, action is always going to be so much better than meditation. I think you want to get to a point where I would call it probably the 80%. When you feel like you got 80% of it, go out and do it and see how it feels. You can always improve on it. What is the statement? Every day in every way I get better and better. So you can always make a commitment every day. I try to be a better person every day. I try to improve myself every day. Some weeks I'm successful. Sometimes I have regression. But if you wait to perfect it, you'll never do it. Because perfection is sort of I don't even think perfection exists except for if you believe in, a higher being. I don't really think, we're supposed to be perfect. But I think that's, if I'd waited for this seminar to be perfect, I would never do it. Because I don't even know what's going to come next on the PowerPoint. But I'm sort of out there doing it and, course correcting as we go. And it'll either work great or I'll make it work great. But get out there and be better. The whole key is being better, isn't it? And being better is a constant process. I covered this. I talked about. Okay, so the third step, having enough confidence and giving yourself permission to start walking down the path to your greatness in as many different categories as you want to pursue. Thinking about it, buying books about it, making all kinds of great definitive notes about it, getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to become great starting tomorrow. I'm going to go on my diet tomorrow. I'm going to start working out tomorrow. I'm going to be a better father tomorrow. I'm going to take my son and play ball with him tomorrow. Isn't really going to do it, is it? So the third step is giving yourself permission to go out and try it. And what happens the first time you try anything new, unless you're a very remarkably, uniquely gifted human being, is you execute terribly. Anybody here have a child or a grandchild? Can you remember when they were first learning to? And I will have a litany. Walk, talk, use the bathroom, eat, ride a bicycle. Did you put a pair of running pants and put them in a 10K the first time they got up, or did you basically give them a 12-course gourmet dinner the first time they lifted a spoon, or did you put them in a triathlon the first time they got on their little tricycle? Probably not, because they probably went a little way and went, or they tried a little way to the bathroom and went, and that's part of the human process, isn't it? So give yourself permission that you probably won't execute very well, and you'll probably fall, fall down miserably or at least painfully in the beginning. Don't try to do everything concurrently. We already talked about that. The fourth is when you fall down, you need someone who's willing to intervene and help get you back on track and course correct. You need someone to believe in you, an advocate, a champion, long enough to keep your momentum and velocity and the force going. I remember years ago, and my body's as broken down from all the exercise I used to do, but I wanted to learn how to do a handstand. I was like 18. I remember sitting down one day, I'm going to do it. And I tried to do a tip-up, which is what you do first with your knees between your hands to try to balance, and I fell over. And I thought, oh, that's no good. And I tried to do it again. I fell over. And then I tried to get up, and I fell and cracked my neck. And I didn't do it again for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I thought, I got to do this. And I did it, and I did a tip-up and could hold it for 12 seconds and then 20 seconds. And I could get my feet about here, and I'd fall over. Then I could get my feet about here, and I could hold it for a minute. Then I could hold it for 2 minutes. And finally I could hold it for 20 minutes. Then I thought, okay, I'm going to start learning how to walk on my hands. And I tried to walk, and I fell over. Then I walked a little further and fell over. But finally I learned how to walk back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But nothing really cool in any part of your life will happen if you try to do it instantaneous. And that's really one of the real flagrant problems that I have with the information marketing world. They will have you believe that you can commandeer a tactic, not a strategy, but a tactic, and that instantaneously you can use that tactic to make you $2 million in your underwear, working an hour part-time while the world goes by, and euphoria is going to prevail, and everything's going to happen masterfully for you. And that's just not really what happens. So later on, we're going to talk, and Carlos will talk about a mastermind alliance. Carlos, and we don't have a disbelief, but he believes very strongly in an internal one. I think an internal one is very, very important if you have an infrastructure, but I think it's easily buildable if you have an external one. You can also get a board of advisors, a private person that can be a mentor, or you can pay for a coach or a mentor, but you need someone to champion your greatness. We all need people to be accounting to and for. We always do. All of us, all our lives. Even if you haven't afforded you courage, desire, and perception of what's on the other side of the mountain, the good, to get started, you frequently fall down. So you're going to get derailed. Just believe that. You want somebody who really has been there and done that to believe in you, or who believes in your greatness with such verve and passion they can't allow you to let yourself and all the people who will benefit when you finally realize and manifest your relative greatnesses, and relative means in all the areas. They can't let you deny yourself that wonderful privilege. Okay, we've already gone through this, so I don't need to repetitive. But you have all this to read and reread in your PowerPoint and reread again. So, and we have a little, know what great looks like specifically for you in all elements. Get a roadmap to greatness. You can't do that without exploring your options. Develop your self-confidence in yourself to get started. Stay the course. Success is not a straight or easy road. Okay, so hopefully we're now ready to move forward, and you've done a little quick soul searching, and we're going to reset, and the choice is yours, greatness or mediocrity. I'm going to presume you're not saying, I want to be mediocre and average. Okay. Yes.
Can I
Please,
add something?
absolutely.
I think when I look at myself, my career, or entrepreneurs, or CEOs, I think that the first and the second steps in the 4 ways to reach greatness are very important, because the first one is in fact your vision that you have for greatness. And that vision is coming from the heart. And the second step is your path. It comes from the mind. But you want to have enthusiasm to commit to you want to reach, you need your heart. Think about it.
And Carlos has been influenced by people who've built vast businesses on worldwide forums. So, I mean, they had to have a vision, they had to have a purpose, they had to have a passion, they had to have the ability to install that same tangible, intangible in a multitude of people, in a multitude of languages, in a multitude of environments, with a multitude of different cultures. So when you think about whatever your business is and where it is and where you want to be, don't feel afflicted or affected. Feel privileged because, as I said, you're already thinking about issues that I can promise the vast majority of your competitors haven't even fathomed. Now, okay, what I want to do is we're going to go through the forces and factors that afflict you. But before we do that, I'm going to ask, and when somebody walked up to me and said, wow, you have a lot of motivation in this. I said, I have no motivation in this. This is not about motivation. I'm not a motivator. I go to parties and say, Jay's a motivator. I said, I'm not a motivator. I don't like motivators. What I am is somebody who knows how much more is possible. And I know how to make the point of how much more is possible. And when you see how much more is possible vis-a-vis what you have allowed yourself to do, achieve, accept, the byproduct is motivation, but that's not what I'm all about. I'm about high performance thinking and high performance achieving and very finite, very, very specific, very strategic, very, very tangible actions. But but I'm about explaining before I get there what's wrong with this picture. Because if you don't know what's wrong with this picture, all that other stuff isn't going to help. Because you won't be able to do anything with it. So you got to slow down enough before you can go fast. So I'm going to hope, even if you think I'm a motivator, which I am not, that this first segment has had at least a reflective impact on you. And again, it's redundant to what I sent you, but hopefully my parenthetical comments, Carlos's, have helped. And what I'd like you to do is, if it's had at least one hopefully positive and hopefully meaningful shift in some element of your thinking about yourself, your business, your role in the cosmos, the market, anything, I would like you to take right this moment 2 minutes and share it with the people around your table and let them do the same with you. And then we'll see if we have a few minutes left to get started, or we'll take a break. Okay, stop. I'm going to go through a very quick, did anybody get any perspective from anybody else? Yeah, it's a building process, because we're talking right now about issues you've probably honestly acknowledged in the macro, very amorphous and superficial way, but you've never thought deeply about them. And as we get more and more layered, towards the end of today, tomorrow, we'll start getting more clinical and more granular and more specific, and the dialogue will be better. But without this as the grounding, honest to goodness, it won't work. I'm going to spend 10 minutes listing some of the forces that you probably, again, are aware of. And then, Carlos, if I don't list all of them, you're welcome to add to them. And then we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, because I want to get you to lunch at a certain time so we can do right after lunch one of these people on digital media, and then we're going to do another one later. And as I said, I'm going to ask fundamentally the same questions of 5 different people who really playing in the field. They're different, right? One's got a very large company, one sold 3 companies, one to Citrix, one's Carlos' son, who's, how many companies did he roll up already? How many did he have before, 20?
Oh, no.
Yeah, so lots of
A
them.
lot.
And you're going to see a whole different series of perspectives. Again, I'm not knocking info marketers, and if you guys are info marketers, I'm just saying I think a lot of info marketers do irreparable damage by making you think they're the holy grail, and the one tactic is the answer to the world, because the world's a hell of a lot more dynamic and complex, and you need to know what different people think is relevant and why. And I don't purport to have all those answers, but I think by the end of this weekend, we'll have 5 or 6 sets of answers that we'll overlay them at the end, and we'll say, what did we learn? Because there's either going to be similarities or differences. Right, Robert? Isn't this fun? Robert comes to a lot of my programs. Is this one starting okay? A good roll? Okay. All right. So I'm going to do just a few things, and you already know this, but you got to recognize it at a deeper level. So there's a lot of shifts, and Carlos reads all these deep. And what's the shift report? That one is from, who did that?
The big shift?
The big shift. Who did
Yeah,
that?
the big shift is studied it. It was analyzing different companies in the United States and around the world, and began with the Boston Consulting Group
Boston
20
Consulting.
years ago. And every 2 years, they release a new study. And
They update it.
they
Okay,
will-
before I get into this, I'm going to give you a chance to be the superstar of the moment. Can you do a litany of what the big shift issues are? Can you do?
Yes.
What are they? Quick.
Well,
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. The big shift, in fact, is about creating wealth. And creating wealth is return on assets. Return on assets and return on investment. So they started 20 years ago, and they realized at first that the productivity or the wealth, the creating wealth went down 75% in 20 years.
Productivity.
Well, return on assets. We
Okay.
are talking about return on assets. Today, it depends of industries, but in some cases it's 10%, 5%. To give you an idea, a company like Apple is 22%. Google, Microsoft, 15, 18%. Nike is 14%, but on average is 2%, 3%, which means that is lower than inflation, the real inflation. So that is a big shift. And so they analyze why companies are not able to, every year going down with the return on assets, or what I call wealth creation, and what they should do.
And let's see some of the factors.
Yes.
Okay. One, as Carlos said. Now, and a lot of you, and I don't know enough about your profile, but I'm going to presume you're not billion-dollar companies, most of you. So you don't even probably think as deeply about return on assets, but he's talking about all these family businesses that have their whole wealth. Most wealth, as you'll see in a few minutes, is really either stems from the business or it's illiquid and it's tied up to the business. And Carlos, the bottom line of what Carlos' research has said is that most family businesses are better off. They could liquidate their assets, take the capital, put it in any alternative, higher yielding, reasonably safe investment category or class, and they'd be better off doing nothing, letting somebody else manage it, right? Exactly. And that's a tragedy. And you've got to look at yourself, even if you're not a big business, with the same kind of discipline, or you'll never be a big business. And as I said, I believe in my heart that the era of lifestyle business is pretty much, I think because of all the competition, you can't just be a static lifestyle business. You got to decide it's time to grow. And then you got to decide how many ways you can grow, talent-wise, partnership-wise. And then you got to say, if I'm going to grow my business, is this the business I should grow? Or is this segment the business I should grow? Because you got to look at, whether you look at tangible or intangible capital, time, effort, opportunity cost. And again, as we'll see, if at the end you got nothing but an income and you didn't get a big enough income to do anything with it, or you got the income and you did nothing with it, what did you end up with? Versus what you could have. And again, highest and best use does not absolutely mean you have to make the most yield, because you have the right to have other factors, as we'll see. Lifestyle could be something, but you better get a good residual yield out of it, or why do it? If you have options, and you all have lots of options. So, return on asset, the topple rate, basically, I can't remember what Carlos, how few people were in the Fortune 500, half of them are gone. I mean, they get consumed. The turnover rate, the topple rate, the failure rate, the mediocrity rate is so high it doesn't even calculate anymore. Go ahead.
But it's very easy, because the first part of the equation is the net after taxes.
And
net
I guess
profit.
you guys, a lot of you guys and girls, if you're smaller, you don't think about this, but you'll never get larger if you don't think about this. And if you're small and you think you're going to stay small, You're probably right, but not the static small that you think. Probably regressively, microscopically, infinitesimally. And that's the reality of our world
No,
today.
it's,
Okay, can you
maybe the
explain that?
next-
Is that it?
No, it's not this one.
Which one?
Probably the
Before?
the next one.
The next one going forward.
Exactly. Here
Okay.
you are.
Okay, so try to explain it.
So now that is the wealth creation formula. Each entrepreneur should know this formula. If you don't know this formula, that is one of the reasons why you are not performing as you should. So first, the first part of the equation is you divide the net profit after taxes divided by sales. It's the net margin. Net margin multiplied by the assets velocity. And asset velocity is the sales divided the total assets. In your company, including if you are a 6 people company, you have assets. You have, if you are manufacturing, you have probably equipment, otherwise you have computer, you have assets. When you divide your sales by total assets, will give you 3, 4, 5, or 1 or 2. When you multiply the net margin by the asset velocity, you have your return on assets. And when you deduct the weighted cost of assets, that is more or less the inflation, you know if you created wealth or you destroyed wealth. And most companies today, particularly family business companies, are destroying wealth. And I know that it's tough because when I'm telling in my first meeting with the CEO, it's tough to tell him you are destroying wealth. But no, I'm not destroying wealth. But I show them the formula. Now, why is important the formula? Because we can strategize. We have here 3 factors: net profit, sales, and total asset. We can play with that. And sometimes a chief financial officer is telling me, Carlos, but it's too complicated. You can take directly the sales, and the sales is an equation, can eliminate, so you divide net profit by total assets, and it's the same. I say, no, it's not the same. Mathematically, it's the same. But strategically, it's not the same, because if you eliminate the sales, you are eliminating the way that you play. You plan, you need to plan to win. You need to plan or play to win, and you need to plan to lead. That is, in fact, what is to reach greatness. And you reach greatness with this formula. And you apply the strategy of preeminence, 3 ways to grow a business, to build up your organization. That is a formula that I can tell you, you are not alone. If you didn't know, sometimes I can find large companies where the CEO is unaware about this formula. Everyone is focused in the net margin. But what happens if you have a lot of assets that you are not using assets? And it's here where you can leverage intellectual assets. Intellectual assets are not in the total assets. That is tangible. But the intangible can be leveraged in the net profit and sales, total assets, and everything, everywhere. And we will be talking a lot about intellectual or relational capital, where I think Jay is a great thinker. I learned a lot about your, and I think that you will be sharing with us tomorrow or this afternoon.
Hopefully. Anyhow, thank you. It's good. Carlos is very, very blessed because he transcends 2 worlds. He spent most of his life with really significant corporations or really significant family businesses. But he's got great empathic respect for smaller businesses. And stuff like this is not what the info marketers would like you to really focus on. But stuff like this is how you build enduring and sustaining and superior, really, growth, success, prosperity, wealth, and certainty. And it's a way of thinking that is very powerful. Everything you'll learn about, even if you don't remember it all, is about harnessing the power of geometry, harnessing the ability to be exponential in all forms. Thank you for that. Can you put me back now to wherever I was? We'll go quick on this and I'm going to get you lunch. Okay. Hold on. Was it back? Yeah, okay. No. It's behind. It's okay, I'll find it. Yeah, okay, top rate. This is wrong. It's like doubling the competitive intensity is doubling every year. There's an article in the book that I'm doing with Damon, and it's funny. It says when he started out, he did one thing now, and he was a one by himself when he did FUBU, the clothing line. He said now if he started out, he's 1 in a million because of the internet. He would have to have a totally different strategy. He'd have to understand all the different ways of competing. He'd have to have so many different cool things on his website. He'd have to have so many experiential engagements, so many things that weren't necessary when all he needed was MTV or LL Cool J to wear his shirt. And you've got to be aware that the dynamics that are affecting isn't necessarily a negative. It's a word depending on how you want to interpret it. One time I remember the most interesting thing in the world, I was reading the definition of cunning. And cunning has a negative connotation, but it's not really a negative word. There's a lot of cool words you can interpret however you want. But with intensity that high, and if you don't know what competitive intensity looks like in all forms, direct competitors, indirect competitors, alternative competitors, competitors who are bringing people to before and after, inertia. If you don't know what that looks like, how can you possibly expect to be superior? I don't even know how you can possibly expect on a sustaining basis to even be equivalent. The performance is deteriorating, as Carlos said, and performance means many things. There was you gave me something else, and I mean, Carlos is my reader. He gets these, $20,000, 20,000-page reports, and he highlights 7 pages and sends them to me, which I'm very grateful for. But one of the documents you sent me was talking about, even with technology, productivity per person is actually dropped, hasn't it?
Yeah, that is here in the United States. They came to the conclusion that the productivity, particularly, there are less entrepreneurs. People large prefer, probably because we are living in difficult times, there are not so many entrepreneurs as they were in the past. And why? Because the productivity went high, but the productivity went high because the financial manipulation is not the real productivity. It's in fact, in part, is the inflation that is high there, and we think that it's productivity, but it's not. But the article, it was very interesting because we said, well, we can wonder what will happen in the next 5 or 10 years if we don't have any more the entrepreneurial mind that made it so strong, this country.
Yeah, and also adding real value and understanding it. So, I mean, there's a few very, very wise people, and they tend to be seen in the digital world using technology, but you got to be able to let technology be your friend. And coming from me, that's hilarious because I'm technologically phobic. But you got to be able to understand how to use it to your great collaborative advantage. And when I use the word collaborative, I don't mean to your selfish advantage. I mean to the advantage you can bring to your marketplace. Communication, benefit, all those things. And you can't if you don't understand not only and I'm not knocking info marketers, I know a lot of them. I just think you got to be connected to the real world at a deep level if you want to basically thrive, not just survive, but thrive. Clients are gaining, so clients got all the power now, and those power is forcing downward pricing and brand disloyalty. And if you accept being reduced to a commodity and marginalized, you got no shot at it. That's why you really have to understand everything out there so you can counter program, so you can understand value creation for the market. Because if not, you got two forces working against you. Your competitors want you to be marginalized, and the consumer knows more sometimes about your competitors than you do. They know more about the alternatives than you do. They know more about what's coming on the horizon and the trends than you do, because you got nose to the grindstone, work, and you got tunnel vision. You're not a divergent thinker. And if you're going to have convergent thinking drive you and hindsight be your propellant, you're not going to win the Indy 500. We already talked about computing infrastructure. Okay, everybody's got untapped opportunities to reverse the negative performance, but you have to embrace pull instead of push. And pull is a lot of things. I've gone to this sophomoric academic process of defining stuff for you because I want you to slow down enough to think about the depth of implication. So what is it? Supply force so as to cause to tend the motion towards the source of the force. To remove from fixed position, extract. Look at all this. You want to get the marketplace embracing you. You want the marketplace to want you. How are they going to want you? How are they going to want you more than anybody else? How are you going to do that? Isn't that your goal? You can't do that if you're not really. You got to be clearly aware of what the game you're playing is and what the outcome and what the rules that you want to establish, not the rules that all your competitors and alternative ones are playing by. It can only happen if you encourage, passionate, purposeful workers at every level. And workers is the wrong word. A lot of this stems from work that I've been influenced by Carlos, and Carlos has been influenced by a lifetime of studies, but they directly apply to larger companies than many of you, not all of you, but they totally apply to you. You just have to adapt, adopt, and torque and extrapolate the words and the meaning. It may not be workers, it may be partners, it may be resources, it may be vendors, it may be collaborators. But you got to be able to get them passionate, purposeful, on the same plane of thinking and belief, and you'll get more of that when we get into preeminence. And you got to tap into knowledge flows, all the knowledge out there, and use it to your greatest leveraged advantage, and use the tools that'll help you, whether it's social software, to solve problems for yourself and others more efficiently and connect more effectively as you find emerging opportunities and marketplaces. Duh. Look at all the things out there that you've got to understand, or you've got to really understand the relevancy to you. Project management, collaborative tools that you can use to figure out everything and make each person 3, 4, 5, 10. Again, remember, you got to outthink. You got to outthink. You got to use your intellectual might. That was one of the first. So here's some of the things that are available to you. Web conferencing, so you can make contact without having to travel. Storage, where you can send things. And I don't even want to get it. Voice over IP. You got to be able to know what they are and then evaluate how many ways you could directly or indirectly use them. But you can't even evaluate until you identify the goals you are trying to achieve, internal and external. Internal is making yourself more competitive, more effective, more strategic. External is how you're going to connect better, how you're going to have more value proposition, how you're going to bond better, how you're going to be more trusted. If you don't understand all the factors you're trying to incorporate in your master game plan, how in God's name can you possibly do it? You can't. So you got to think much more granularly in order to be actually strategic. Does that make sense? And research analytics, Hoover, sales team, like when Carlos knows this, we're moving me up the food chain. When I have a meeting with somebody that we've met on LinkedIn, I get everything. I get their background. I get their company. I get the good. I get the bad. I look at the competitors. I look at the other things they're doing. I look at the alternatives. I study everything. I spend hours because I want to have more knowledge about what I'm dealing with, so I feel in an authoritative mode. So my connection is going to be authentic, strong, purposeful, and ultimately profitable. But you think winging it is really going to get you anywhere today when you've got access to all this? And some of it's not even, it doesn't cost anything, or it costs nominal. I'm just showing you all the things available. I don't use them all. I'm intimidated by half of them. But these are going to make a difference, and you should know about which ones will help you internally be more productive, be more effective, be more innovative, so that the outcome will be more benefit, more desire, more advantageous attitude from the marketplace, and what's going to get you a greater marketplace.
Maybe here we are focused on email. Maybe someone, a part of you, social media, but we forgot that there are the innovation and usage models, enterprise, consumer, and Hoover's is a good example. Can tell you exactly before visiting or looking for your prospects, you can find everything about the names, emails, what they do, their sales, return on asset, whatever.
Anything you want to know?
So now why is important? Because if you try to have a conference call using webinar, GoToMeeting, for example, and you will say, well, but it's very expensive. It's $50 a month. You can start with GoToMeeting. And you can, right now, here, to be connected with someone, a prospect or a client. So it's very important that, again, we are not having enough foresight to make the distinction, because it can help us a lot. So we think always, and think particularly entrepreneur, because I was once, we think too much about cost and not return on investment. $50 a month for GoToMeeting could be $500 a month. What you need to know, what is the return on investment? What I can do if I invest $600 a year in GoToMeeting
It's good.
or Hoover's.
And the question is also, how many ways can I utilize it? Because the biggest, and we're going to talk throughout about critical thinking. One of the advantages we have, where's the gentleman from, are you the one from China? I've done, and Carlos, we talk about this all the time. I've done a lot of work in Asia, and I've done a lot of work in Mexico. I haven't done, Carlos has done all over Latin America. And you would know this because you're from China. The work ethic and the ambition and the commitment that people in Asia or Latin America will make are, they will work us into the ground. However, we have one advantage. I'm not trying to belittle your culture, but we have the capacity to be better critical thinkers. And the reason, a lot of it, is an academic one. In Latin America as well as in Asia, they have a lot of rote, R-O-T-E training. It's memorization. So it teaches you very logical, more convergent thinking.
Yeah.
But it doesn't teach you divergent thinking. When I go and do my seminars, it's liberating when you start showing people implications and correlations of not doing it the way everybody else is doing it. You can see the smiles on their faces. But you have to be able not just to go, oh, you got to be able to do critical thinking. Say, how many ways can I use it? Internal, external. Like you say, well, I don't have any use for GoToMeeting. Maybe the right question is, how could I have a use for GoToMeeting? And then the question is, how could I have a use for GoToMeeting with suppliers, with markets, with new markets, with niches, with partners? I mean, and you got to be able to think critically, not linear. Good. Thank you, whoever found that. Key drivers of performance of business, they are hugely shaped by digital flows of knowledge, capital, and talent provide greater advantage or disadvantage and amplify. Yeah, it goes both ways. It goes both ways. So if you want to be an ostrich in the sand, you certainly have that privilege, and you will grow, but you just grow negatively on a geometric, asymmetric, downward spiral. Emerging markets. Okay, this is very interesting. What is it? The BRICS nations. You know what the BRICS, well, he's one of the BRICS nations. There's, what is it, Brazil, is it Russia?
Yeah,
India, what is the other ones called?
Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa.
Okay.
BRICS.
So they're growing both in their significance, their competitiveness, their economic, their affluence, their level of wanting materialism, and their competitive prowess. We were talking about Rob. My Rob just bought an IKEA. It's gorgeous. It was like 23,000 list, and he paid 17,000. It's as big as It's a BMW 5, and it's gorgeous. And if you study, Carlos gets me all these great books. If you look at how these BRICS nations are dividing and conquering markets, they're very strategic, don't you think?
Well, you need to be aware, I don't know if you're aware or not, but 58% of the economy, the world economy growth is in these 5 countries.
And there's two implications.
58% of the economy growth.
There's two implications, and you made both. One is it prepares you that you need to look more globally no matter what you do. And secondly, it should pre-alert you that they're going to look at your market. And as Carlos says, if they're going to look at your market and they don't know your market, maybe you should seek them out and partner with them in certain ways before they become your enemy.
Exactly. And a good example is a company based on Taiwan, Aswad, or Aswad. Now, probably no one between you knows Aswad, but they have already 7% of market share, the computers in the United States. Why? Because they were manufacturing for Dell, for Hewlett-Packard, for everyone. And they realized that, by the way, the CEO went to the States 3 months ago, and it was in the Wall Street Journal, and he said, well, you know, we are very good technicians, but we are not very good marketers. We need to invest a lot. And why you are coming with your brand? No one knows your brand in the United States. Easy, because we were manufacturing for Hewlett-Packard, for everyone, and our net margin was 2.5%. So we said, why not to make 6% or 7%? And so they decided to break down the contract with Hewlett-Packard, with Dell. I don't know if it's just the reason, but just at the same moment where Hewlett-Packard and Dell were having problems. So there are two implications here. The first one, as Jay said, well, the first one is that we have new competitors that we need to be aware. And sometimes we can build ventures. And the second one, I think that we don't realize, but look at Android. Well, everyone, Samsung, no one is manufacturing here. I think just now Apple will be start manufacturing something here. But everything is manufactured in Taiwan, China, or whatever. So it's implication, big implication for the future.
And when I travel, I mean, he's from Beijing. It's a robust economy there. It's a lot more aggressive and sophisticated than you think. And that's how it is around the world. And you have to look at both positive, negative, and how you can harness the forces. You don't have to. You can wait for the forces to basically do, and I'm not trying to make fun if anyone's from Oklahoma, what they did in Oklahoma, or you can be prepared to harness the forces because it's not going to change. And this goes basically to what I stand for. So it's certain competition will be more aggressive. You've got to optimize performance, talent management. Talent management means your people or your access to partners or intellectual capital or relational capital. And if you've never done it, you got to think about it. But it's not negative. Again, this is, to me, liberating and exciting because you have such great advantage if you break it and you don't let it intimidate you.
It's a good example, maybe, Jay. We are working 3 years already in our e-learning program. In our team, we have people everywhere. In Australia, in China, here, each one doing different designers, programs. So it's easy today with a GoToMeeting or Cisco, or whatever. You can communicate. We don't know. We don't know everyone. I think.
Yeah, we have no employees, but we have a lot of partners who are not equity, but they're doing a lot of and because they have been. And there's a word. There's a phrase in The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and I'm not advocating the book or not, but it talks about that he will win whose army is animated with the same spirit.
Yeah.
And if you can get whatever your team means, your vendors, your partners, your collaborators, your skill providers, your experts, your consultants, your coaches, all animated with the same spirit. As long as that spirit is harnessing all these factors we talked about, you'll win. But if they're just doing it to be doing it, and you're just doing it to be doing it, you're just bouncing into each other. But Carlos has gotten people so enraptured with our body of work for the market that we are reaching, that they go out of their way to improve on it, to come up with suggestions, way, way beyond what they're being paid for, right?
Exactly. And by the way, we share with them, Jay and myself, advising them. And the company that is doing the e-learning, for example, they double their sales because we told them, well, why you don't don't leverage the people that are working for us?
Yeah.
What they did, and suddenly, and it's a small company, I think $2 million or $3 million a year. It's a family business. And they are doubling their sales in a tough, difficult time because they are offering more value.
And that's the key, but value in the eyes of the beholder. So most organizations are not investing enough developing their talent. I'd say their own talent, but they are developing only operation tactical people instead of strategic skills, turning challenges into opportunities through a new mindset. That's what I'm going to really hammer you and re-hammer you and go, I already heard that, I want to move on. And I'm going to say, no, you don't. You want to make it so indelibly embedded in your mind that you look at every aspect of your business differently, transactionally, strategically, and tactically. Boy, that's weird the way that's set up. Okay, different problems, multiple solutions, but they're different definitions of problem, resulting in different attitudes, some proactive, some passive. Proactive, active thinkers, CEO, entrepreneur. It's obvious, but this is not positive thinking. This is just strategic discipline. Problems are going to befall you throughout the last part of your life and the next part. You either can, have great fun with them, make the most out of them, have them be the challenge to propel you upward, or you can be remorseful and lament and torment, and they're not going to stop happening. So why don't you start harnessing? Okay, how many paths could you pursue? And let's count the ways. Was going to be an exercise. I'm not going to do it. Only because I want to break. We'll come back and hands up. Is he stretching or does he want to talk to me? Oh, he's stretching. Okay. So I'm going to stop because I want us back at 1 o'clock. We're going to start doing some interviews. And we're going to keep going. You already know the PowerPoint. Just know that I will skip over things if I feel I have made my point strongly enough. I will repeat it. The point of this whole thing is how to work on the geometry of your business from as many exponential impact points, internal, external, as you can, but understanding better the game you're playing, understanding the factors and forces you're trying to harness, and looking within and outside and redefining everything about what you're doing, why you're doing it, how it's doing, and what you should be doing differently, and knowing enough about the rest of your world that you're not a horse-drawn carriage in a world of Ferraris. So why don't you break? If you get the chance at lunch, don't even sit with anybody you know. If you had any cool impression from any of this, if you had a bad impression, I think Jay's a crazy man, it's okay. Share whatever your impression is with everybody. Come back at exactly 1. It shouldn't be that hard to get lunch here. And we're going to start doing some interviews with a couple of the digital people. We're going to continue, and you already know sort of the path I'm going to take. And I will use the workbook, but I'll use it for exercises or homework. And I'm hoping you're as happy to be here as I am to have you here. And we'll continue the sojourn at 1 o'clock, okay? Thank you, and you can turn me off.